welcome everyone to our program this evening. My name is Jessica Lorai, and I'm the program director at the Interfaith Center at Miami University. The Interfaith Center is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to invite people from diverse secular, spiritual, and religious traditions to participate in one another's practices in order to cultivate appreciative understanding and friendship. We seek to unify people around common moral, social, and ethical concerns in order to build a more just and equitable society. So tonight our program is an introduction to the Poor People's Campaign, and we have two speakers who will be joining us this evening. The first is Monica Hummerick, who joined the Poor People's Campaign in March of 2020 at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, when she was evacuated to her home of record in Ohio from Colombia, where she served as a Peace Corps volunteer in the community economic development sector. Throughout the pandemic, she's contributed to the state campaign as a coordinating committee member, coordinated direct actions and digital organizing efforts, including live stream media for national events, and facilitated and documented virtual circle process dialogues to harvest stories of people impacted by systemic poverty, systemic racism, militarism, ecological devastation, and the false moral narrative of religious nationalism. Monica is employed as a community mediator and holds an MA in dispute management or dispute resolution and conflict management from Southern Methodist University and a bachelor's degree in Spanish from Miami University. Our second speaker is Claire Laporte, who's a founding member of the Ohio Poor People's Campaign as trained by Dr. Reverend Bishop William Barber Jr. in Detroit in 2018. She retired from aviation. She's been deeply involved in the various issues that impact minorities and immigrants within the region. Claire is an immigrant and watched the inequity of that system from within. While awaiting the retirement of her partner, she opened their home to foster care. She eventually adopted one child and saw 10 more to their permanency goals over the last 5 years. Claire splits her time supporting impacted communities and working on the 5 systemic evils as defined by the Poor People's Campaign. She also is currently taking a course to teach citizens to become journalists within their own local communities so they can report what the national media fails to focus on, which in part covers the environmental assault in Ohio along the Ohio River. So I believe Monica will be starting us off this evening, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Monica, and you can introduce us to the Poor People's Campaign.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Jessica, and thank you everyone for inviting us. We have some slides, so I'll pull them up and start off with some music. So.
Hatred, we're gonna tear your kingdom down. Hatred, we're gonna tear your kingdom down. You've been building your kingdom all over this world, but hatred, we're gonna tear your kingdom down. Hatred, we're gonna tear your kingdom down. Hatred, your kingdom all over this land, but hatred, we're gonna tear your kingdom down.
So that was the amazing Yara Allen. She's the Theomusicology Director for Repairs of the Breach in the Poor People's Campaign. And Jessica already gave us our introduction, but thank you for having us here. My name is Monica Humrick, and my partner here is Claire Laporte. And we're happy to be here with you today. So thankful for the Interfaith Center for inviting us to talk about the Poor People's Campaign. We're always happy to talk about the Poor People's Campaign, and we will go anywhere and share the message. We have another song here. Music is essential to our movement and the campaign. And I would encourage you, even if your mic is off, keep your mic off, but feel free to sing along at home.
This song that we're about to learn is a song that's entitled "Somebody's Hurting My Brother." Now, this song was actually born in a town hall meeting around coal ash. And the meeting came about because Duke Energy was spilling coal ash into poor Black and brown and poor white neighborhoods. After hearing testimony after testimony of people who were impacted physically and mentally by the coal ash, this song came as an inspiration of those testimonies. So I'll call to you, somebody's hurting my brother, and it's gone on, and your response is, far too long. Yes, it's gone on.
Far too long.
It's gone on.
Far too long.
Somebody's hurting my brother, and it's gone on.
Far too long.
Now the end is, and we won't be silent anymore. We'll say that together.
And we won't be silent anymore.
Okay? And so we'll try the rehearsal version, which goes, oh, somebody's hurting my brother, and it's gone on
Far too long.
Yes, it's gone on
Far too long.
I tell you it's gone on
Far too long.
oh, somebody's hurting my brother, and it's gone on
Far too long.
together, and we won't
Be silent anymore.
Now we're gonna put a little rhythm to this, okay? Okay? But we're gonna speed it up just a little bit.
we won't be silent anymore. Last time, all together. And we won't be silent anymore.
So the Poor People's Campaign, I hope you all were able to sing along at home with that song, Somebody's Hurting Our Brother and Our Sisters, and we won't be silent anymore. We're talking loud about the intersectionality of injustice. And Claire, would you like to talk a little bit about how the Poor People's Campaign started?
Sure. Thank you. Monica started off with music because every meeting and rally and moral mass march that we do starts with music and ends with music. And it's a way to keep focused on the campaign without being distracted, especially if people on the sidelines are not supporting your march. But getting back to the Poor People's Campaign, was started by Martin Luther King Jr. And there are some who believe that he was assassinated because of this one specific campaign, because at that time he had managed to get Union, white, Black, poor white together on one page. And the government was not overly thrilled with the fact that these various groups were actually coming together in order to lobby for civil rights. So unfortunately, he was assassinated. 3 years ago was the 50th anniversary of his assassination. And prior to that, Reverend Barber wanted to host some sort of meeting, a mass. He wanted to do something to mark that anniversary. And so they went around the country taking the pulse of the 12 poorest states. And once they drew all the numbers, they realized that we're worse off now than we were 50 years ago when Martin Luther King Jr. was fighting for civil rights. And so they decided that they would try and organize the 12 poorest states in order to come together as one voice to fight for equity within this country. And we've gone from 12 states to 47 states who are members and have one campaign or multiple campaigns in each state, with the capital campaign being kind of the major organizer for each state that joined. So we have, to launch it on the 50th anniversary, we started what they called the 40 days of action. And that was to represent the 40 days that they lasted on the mall. They actually camped out after he had been assassinated. They carried out the one task that he wanted to do. And thousands of people had basically set up tents on the National Mall, and they managed to stay for 40 days. So there were 40 days of action, and every day there was 3 events a week, and then a march every Monday on the various state capitals. We all marched in unison. We all went to our state capitals each different week with the same theme, the same messaging, the same requests. And we did it all at the same time across the country. And that happened for 6 weeks. And on the 7th Monday, everyone went to Washington, D.C. This was pre-pandemic, of course. And since that time, we've been pushing various states and our own state, specifically Ohio, for changes in the laws that impact the citizens of Ohio. And Martin Luther King Jr., as you can see from this graphic, had the first 3 interlocking injustices, which was systemic poverty, systemic racism, and the war economy. Reverend William Barber added 2 more. And so it's not just called the Poor People's Campaign, but it is now called the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. And he added ecological devastation, as well as the distorted moral narrative of religious nationalism. So we worked towards 5 interlocking injustices. And so that's what the main focus of the campaign is. And we are trying to bring together the 141 million low-wage earners as one voting body, as one lobbying body. And if we can pull that off, then we will have the loudest voice. And currently, the newest government is finally speaking about poverty. Poverty has never been a campaign slogan, has never been a promise, has never, ever been anything that politicians approached. And but the current government is listening, and they are starting to use campaign language. So we are making some headway with regards to the poverty initiatives. And so we actually have groups working with some of Biden's campaign that are breaking things down and hopefully putting forth policies that will help reduce the impact of the way wealth is distributed in this country. So that's the basis of the campaign.
Thanks, Claire. The campaign has gathered a lot of information, a lot of statistics. And if you go to the Poor People's Campaign website, you can pull up different reports that have been created. And so I just wanted to share some of the state facts that they have for Ohio. So in Ohio, this is prior to the pandemic, an estimated 34% or 3.8 million people in Ohio were considered poor or low income. That's 48% of the children in Ohio, 40% of women in Ohio, 61% of our Black people, 59% of Latino people here, and 33% of white people. And in Ohio, that's almost 2.9 million people. We hear a lot of talk about living wage and even a fight for 15. But in Ohio, a person would need $23.61 an hour for a living wage. And currently the minimum wage in the state of Ohio is $8.55. So we fall way short of even giving the bare minimum that a person would need to be able to afford an apartment, food, utilities, transportation. In Ohio, our law enforcement agencies are receiving millions of dollars, 56.4 million in surplus of Department of Defense equipment to further militarize our police activities. And so we have to question why our domestic police forces require military equipment. And then very concerning is the diseases of despair in Ohio. I think almost all communities in Ohio have been impacted by the opioid crisis, and diseases of despair are identified as suicide, cirrhosis of the liver from alcoholism, and overdose from substance abuse. And in Ohio, about 4 in 10 of our population have reported symptoms of depression or loss of hope during the pandemic. And for poor and low income households, that rate is about 6 in 10. So that's just a kind of picture of where we are in Ohio. And one of the initiatives this past year is for a third Reconstruction. So the first Reconstruction was after the Civil War, and then the second Reconstruction was after the Civil Rights era. And so what the Poor People's Campaign is calling for now is a third Reconstruction to establish justice, provide for general welfare, and decades of austerity, and recognize that policies that center that 140 million are also good economic policies that can heal and transform the nation. And that 140 million is determined by the studies that the Poor People's Campaign has done to identify an updated poverty measure. So the poverty measure that our government is currently using was set at a time when families and our economy looked completely different, back when there was, theoretically a single earner in the nuclear family, and everyone had a home, that kind of thing. And that's just not even realistic in our society today.
The government actually uses numbers from 1956. So that just goes to show you how far behind. And that helps everything look like, we're not as poorly off as we are, and the country and the systems are not as badly off as they are. But we haven't updated our numbers in years.
So Claire was talking about this earlier, about the power of poor and low income voters. So this is another report that the Poor People's Campaign policy team has come out with, where there's these myths around poor people, stigma around who we think poor people are. And one of the myths is that they're not interested in voting, and that they're apathetic. And so some of the studies that have been done, if you look at these charts on the left-hand side, are people with an income below 200% of poverty level. And then on the right, income at above 200% poverty level. And they look pretty similar. So you can't really single out poor people as being apathetic, although they do identify with not feeling like their issues are being addressed, or that the candidates are not taking their concerns seriously. So as Claire was saying, if we can mobilize the 140 million poor and low income voters, which is practically half of the country, they can drive the policy decisions that lift from the bottom. So, one of the things that we say is when you lift from the bottom, everyone rises. So I don't know, Claire, did you have anything you want to add to that?
Oops, there we go. It is a fallacy, because if people paid attention to redistricting, if the powers that be thought that voting didn't matter, they wouldn't be trying to restrict people from voting. They wouldn't gerrymander, the 15 districts, and all of a sudden 13 of them are completely one-sided, and there's only 2 districts that are on the other. And it doesn't matter if every Democrat, for example, and independent voted in the state of Ohio, we would still not get a representative from those sides, because currently the map right now will not allow us to even run fair elections. So our votes do matter, and our votes do count, but we need to make sure people understand that they will be heard. And that is one tool we have, and it's a very important tool to use.
Yeah. So one of our initiatives is the we must do more, and more stands for mobilize, organize, register, and educate people for a movement that votes. So in this campaign, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to mobilize people so that ultimately they're able to influence the decisions that are made that affect our lives.
And in Ohio, we have 1,270,000 low-income voters who qualified to vote who did not vote in the last election. That's a big chunk of people.
Yeah. Okay, we have another song. So, go ahead and sing along at home.
Because this campaign is paying homage to the old and the new, we think about the then and the now of a movement. We're bridging the gap between 1968 and 2018, which is 50 years of just revolution and 50 years of activism. So we also incorporated a new part that incorporates hip hop, a little hip hop aspect to it. So to bring the old with the new. So when we get to that, we'll teach you how the words flow and go.
So your words are first, everybody's got a right to live. And before this campaign fails, we'll all go down to jail. Because everybody has a right to live. You got that?
Got that.
All right.
And so then the second part will be everybody's got a right to live, and then you all will say to live. And then everybody's got a right to love.
To love.
Everybody's got a right to dream. To dream. Everybody's got a right to learn. To learn. Got it? All right.
There we go.
Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to live. And before this campaign fails, we'll all go down to jail. Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to live. To live. Everybody's got a right to dream. To dream. Everybody's got a right to love. To love. Everybody's got a right to learn. To learn. Everybody's got a right to live. To live. Everybody's got a right to do. Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to live. And before this campaign fails, we'll all go down to jail. Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to
So two of our main objectives with the Poor People's Campaign are to change the narrative around poverty by changing the narrators. So, and building power. And, when people hear Poor People's Campaign, sometimes they think, what is that, some sort of a charity? To give money to poor people or to raise money for poor people. And no, this is about lifting up impacted, poor and low income people and putting them in leadership positions and helping them build their own power, to find their voice, to speak for themselves about what's happening. And we've played a lot of music tonight, and that's because, theomusicology is essential to the campaign. Claire talked a little bit about that before. One of the ways that we build power is through direct action, and the arts are how we support our direct action. We see everyone as having a voice. We are all creative beings. And so, in the Ohio Poor People's Campaign, you don't have to be a trained vocalist or have your fine arts degree to be an artist. You come, and there is a place for you to be creative, to apply your skills, learn something new, and work together. And our direct actions are ways for people sometimes who have never met before to come together and in a collective act, create something new. So this is just a quick video in the before times, and take a look at what's happening here in this video, and see if you can see yourself there.
All right, here we go. Organize, organize, organize. We gotta organize, organize, organize. Everybody now. Organize, organize, organize. We gotta organize, organize, organize. 'Cause we want justice for our people. Living wages and equality. Your turn. And we want justice for our people. We want wages and equality. So we gotta organize, organize, organize. Organize, organize, organize. We gotta organize, organize, organize. We gotta organize, organize, organize. 'Cause we want justice, changes for our children. Free education and the right to dream. Your turn. Then we want peace for our children. Free education and the right to dream. So we gotta organize, organize, organize. We gotta organize, organize, organize. We better organize, organize, organize. Organize.
So what we have coming up on Monday, December 13th, we are headed to Washington, D.C. In support of the Build Back Better plan. And we are mobilizing now as we speak to try to get everyone out there to make our voices heard. So some of the benefits that the Build Back Better plan has for poor and low income people are expanded childcare tax credits, the earned income tax credit, universal pre-K, closing Medicaid gap coverage, raising wages for home health care workers, giving family and medical leave. And, a key point is that will not increase the deficit and will be funded through tax on corporations and the wealthy. We understand that their Build Back Better plan, still doesn't address all of the need. And you could go to the Poor People's Campaign website to get more details and a breakdown of the Build Back Better plan and ways that could still be improved.
So, and just go back to that, just to talk about that slide before, all the signs that you see people making, the signs that you see people holding behind as we're marching, that's what they're actually doing in this video. We get together and make all the signage for the campaign that we need. And they do it a couple of times a year, pre-pandemics. Then it's sent out to all the various states. So if you had people go from Ohio, they would take the signs that they made and bring them back to Ohio and Illinois and Kentucky and so on. So we are taught how to silkscreen and how to produce our own signage that go along with the campaigns, not only nationally, but our state campaigns as well when we're lobbying our own state governments.
Yep, and some of the things that we've done too, we've met earlier, like if we have a direct action, we'll show up early and, we've done like car decorating and, there's even things that you could do an art build we've done art builds virtually where, we all decorate and design postcards that we end up mailing into our legislators. So.
Yeah, the pandemic has made for a lot of creativity, that is for sure.
Mm-hmm. We are building up to June 18th. This is a moral march on Washington. We have, an action on Monday, but this is going to be big. June 18th, the Mass Poor Peoples and Low Wage Workers Assembly. So we want as many people who can be there to come and join us for this march.
And those who are interested, if you get more involved in the campaign, we will actually be sending buses from each state. So we hope to get several 100,000 people to attend this moral mass meeting. And the last one we did was online. This will be the first big in-person one. We had 2.1 million people attend our online mass moral meeting last year. So if we can get 1 million physical bodies or 2 million physical bodies to march on the mall, it'll be incredible.
And we'll go ahead and play another song here.
We are a new unsettling force. You say that?
We are a new unsettling force.
And we are powerful.
And we are powerful.
We are a new unsettling force.
We are a new unsettling force.
And we are here.
And we are here.
We are a new unsettling force.
We are a new unsettling force.
For liberation.
For liberation.
And we got nothing to lose.
And we got nothing to lose.
But our chains.
But our chains.
We are a new unsettling force, and we are powerful. A new unsettling force, and we're here. A new unsettling force for liberation, and we got nothing to lose but our chains. We are a new unsettling force, and we are powerful. A new unsettling force, and we're here. A new unsettling force for liberation, and we got nothing to lose but our chains. And we got nothing to lose but our chains. And we got nothing to lose but our chains. And we got nothing to lose but our chains. And we got nothing to lose but our
So if you can see in a lot of these videos, we have children. We do not do any action that involves any type of violence. We are a civil organization. We are partisan, and we are political, pardon me, we are nonpartisan, and everybody is welcome. We bring wheelchairs, we bring walkers, we bring seniors, we bring all religious leaders. We bring children simply because this is their future and they have a right to fight for it as well, and they have a right to stand and speak. And I'll give you an example. The first week of the 40 days of action that we did to launch the campaign 3 years ago, I had a little foster child who was 7 years old at the time, and she stood in Columbus and spoke in front of 450 people on behalf of the children in foster care in Ohio and Kentucky. I've since adopted that little girl, but all children are welcome. People come and they walk or if we have to push them, we borrow wheelchairs. Reverend Barber refers to this group. It's everybody in, nobody out. And that means your mental capacity, your physical capacity, your age, your orientation, your religion, it doesn't matter. None of that is important with regards to what we're battling for. Everybody has a right. And so when these moral mass marches happen, it's not just Reverend Barber who is present. He has the leaders of all the faiths in the United States represent. So they all have a say, they all get to speak. And then there are a few atheists like myself who also go and believe that this is a moral movement and this country has to change. So that's why I just wanted to bring attention to the fact that we have teenagers, we have children, and we have the elderly and everybody in between. Absolutely everybody is welcome.
Yeah, and it's the fusion movement, fusion organizing. That's key to the campaign. Going back to the intersectionality of the injustices, it's we have to come together across these lines of division. That is what makes this work so dangerous, right? Because once we're united, we can never be divided. So I don't know if you saw this, Claire. A comment was our question: does the Poor People's Campaign have any Canadian connection? You're on mute.
Yep, I'm shaking my head. Actually, there are organizations that are starting around the world. Canada is one of them. And by the way, I am Canadian. That's early on I said that I was an immigrant from another country. Although a lot of people think it's not that different, it is extremely different in my experience. But yes, actually we have some religious leaders that come down and do these marches with Reverend Barber. They usually come from the United Church of Canada and a lot of the more liberal Christian churches. So the movements are starting up there as well as an organization called Surge, which is standing up for racial justice. And we have a nice big chapter in Toronto as well. So we're slowly branching out. Keep in mind, Reverend Barber has been invited to visit with the Pope twice, and he was there not 3 weeks ago. So he's got a lot of people paying attention to this approach, simply because we're not a poor country. And we shouldn't be having citizens who are living on third world standards and who are lacking. Ohio, for example, has spent $21.2 billion of taxpayer funds go to the Pentagon as part of their budget. That's just the Ohio state. I don't know all the other states off the top of my head. But it would be just amazing if that money would be redirected and actually supporting the citizens that contribute to it. We're getting poorer as a nation, and yet during the pandemic, so from March to September, we have the top 1% of this country that made $282 billion. They weren't impacted at all. These are groups that don't pay taxes. They get around it. They've got accountants to figure out all the loopholes. No offense, a lot of churches took COVID money. And again, the churches help somewhat, but they don't have enough of a social net to help everybody. So, there's money out there. It just has to be distributed equitably so that everybody gets a piece of the pie, a share. It's not a pie. I don't get anything less if I give somebody my neighbor something. It doesn't work that way. So,
And
but
that's-
yes, there are more campaigns that are starting beyond the border of the United States.
Yeah, I think, Claire, what you're touching on too is part of the changing the narrative. You know, there's this narrative that we have in this country that there isn't enough money to go towards the social services, and yet we have billions of dollars to go towards war. You know, and what is really making our country safe? You know, so.
Or $2 trillion to go in tax rebates to the 1% and corporations. Well, we
Yeah.
can't find 1 trillion for infrastructure. So
Yeah,
things have to be turned around.
I have a question for you ladies. Thank you so far. It's been a wonderful presentation. I think one of the things that struck me about the Poor People's Campaign was the outright blatant use of the word poor people. There's always been a stigma around being a poor person, as if you somehow have brought it upon yourself. And I know Claire and I have spoken about this, and it's an interesting subject to discuss. So would you mind talking a little bit about that?
Sure. Poverty itself is part of the systemic evils. People make money off of people who are poor, and I don't mean physically robbing them. It's just a slow trickle of absorbing all the services and the funds that should go in your direction, that go towards other things. The stigma, poverty, mental illness, all of those go together as part of the battle. And I can liken it to corporations have convinced us, as well as, you know, people who are affluent and politicians who are not there to actually serve their constituents. They have us fighting for the scraps. So, you know, you're not as poor if you're, you know, poorer than somebody else, or they pit us against each other over topics that actually are not real, and we get stuck in that. And while we're fighting over the scraps, they're running away with the bank. So most people have the conception that being poor is a negative thing, and that comes out of the prosperity gospel. That comes out of when corporations went into the southern churches and started teaching the pastors and paying the pastors to teach in such a manner. So, you know, light, good, dark, bad, rich, hardworking, poor, lazy, you know, breaking it down to the point where it made it look like, well, if you were a good religious person, wealth and good things will happen to you. And so for those who are having all these things happen to them that aren't good, obviously you aren't a good enough Christian or a religious follower. And it's really unfortunate, because that's divided a lot of people as well. Like, you know, there's a meme that went around today, which I absolutely love, for people who do social media. And I don't know if you remember, there was a show called Undercover Boss. And the meme today was, I'd like to see Jesus come back on a program of Undercover Boss and go to Joel Osteen's church. And that just goes to show you about how we've taken religion and corrupted it to our own needs, to where you have a pastor who has two $65 million jets and a 30,000 square foot home, but wouldn't help the people in Texas when they were in crisis, and when they were flooded out, and when they were happening. And his teaching of Christianity is completely foreign to what Jesus Christ practiced. And but yet we choose, you know, to continue to funnel money to him as a religious leader, because we think that that'll get us closer to where we want to go. And that's not always following, you know, in Jesus's steps. So we have a campaign slogan. It's called "Fight Poverty, Not the Poor." And most of the poor people that, or the people who are struggling and impacted, Most of the people that I help and volunteer with have 2 and 3 jobs. You cannot tell me that that person is lazy. They're working every waking moment that they can. One of our campaign founders used to work 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. She's still poor. She's got this, the heart of an angel, but she's definitely by no stretch of the imagination lazy. So, landing it and the terminology for being poor is just where you are. And it means that you did not get the advantages that other people have had.
And it's not your fault.
No.
Right. And our society tells you it is, and that it's something to be ashamed of or embarrassed of. And, if you go back to the statistics in Ohio, if 40% of Ohioans are considered poor or low income, then it's not that far away. It's probably at home. And, we work so hard to try to not be poor. I know myself, where I grew up, it's like, well, if you're going to get a good job, you're going to have to move away from here, and so then I lived in Cincinnati for 10 years. And then it was like, well, now, my job moved me to Dallas, and so I had to keep getting farther and farther away from home in order to, not be poor, basically, and I think we talked about how with the evacuation, I was brought back to Ohio because that's where my family lives. I wasn't going to go back to Texas. But, it's clear that there are fewer opportunities here, and the poverty measure that we talked about. So we work so hard to not be poor, to not be called poor, to not identify as poor. But then if we really had the poverty measure set at, the 140 million, how many of us would that include? So it probably includes more of us than we care to admit. And why? Because of that stigma, so we need to, get rid of the stigma. And part of this campaign and building the power, changing the narrative is, we're in this together. There's nothing to be ashamed of, and we have every right to the abundance of this country that was built, on with our labor.
Yeah, thank you for that. I would like to open things up if anyone would like to ask questions about the campaign or any of the information that's been presented so far. If you would like to raise your hand, free. Cheryl, go ahead and you can unmute yourself.
Just a comment to the last speaker when she's talking about changing the narrative and how we have to start doing that. It seems to me in my limited experience that the change needs to come from the top down, because that's where the narrative is being directed downwards to poor people to begin with. How do we, you can yell and scream and protest and shout all you want when you're campaigning, but it's how do you get the people at the top to change that narrative to help support that change at the very bottom where it's impacting the most people?
Well, I can speak a little bit to it, and I would imagine Claire has some ideas too. One is with the stigma. How many people can identify with being poor or low income, and making sure that we're calling in our family, our past generations, making sure that we're not separating ourselves from our own history there, I would say. this is a fusion movement, so making sure that we're reaching across lines of division to build our solidarity. And then with the more organizing, so mobilizing, organizing, registering, and educating, that's building our voice to change that narrative. But then, you know, once we have the solidarity and the, you know, we make ourselves heard. And Claire, I mean, you kind of talked a little bit about how the campaign has influenced recent rhetoric, political rhetoric as well.
Yeah, the trickle down has never worked, be it financial, political, it's never worked. That's why even Reverend Barber calls it the Build Better Back plan from bottom up. He adds his own beat to it. The thing is we still have a tool that has to be used, and that's voting. A lot of people think that voting is useless. They become apathetic. And when you stand alone in let's say, you know, the state of Kentucky, and we vote Democratic, my vote doesn't count in a Republican area, but I am still voting. And eventually people will be voting for the right groups. And that's the thing. So as a group, as a fusion movement, we actually, if we all are fighting for the same things, we would be the largest lobbying body on Washington around. There's nobody that has 140 million voters behind them. So in order to change the policies, we start small. We start at our local level, then we work at our state, and then we change national policies based on that as well. But we have to vote. And that's one of the biggest things that we don't. And for example, I cited earlier that we had over 1 million people that were able and qualified to vote in Ohio, 1,270,000 to be specific, that didn't vote in the last election. So can you imagine what would have swayed depending upon where they voted as to who they would have voted for? And most of the time, people who are impacted tend to vote for progressive policies because progressive policies are broader and they lift more people up. So the distribution of equity is better. So we're pushing from the bottom up, and that's how this organization works. And and having said that, I can't speak for somebody else. I can only speak for myself. I can't tell the story of another impacted person. And that's the other stronghold of the campaign. We lift the impacted voices. And when people hear what the truth is in their communities, because a lot of communities, people live in their community and they're pretty blinded. They're busy by what's going on every day. They're struggling to stay alive. They're struggling to stay on top. They're struggling to keep everything together. When you have people who have a little bit more power and they are faced with these people, as opposed to being able to bury their head in the sand, you get more of an impact, because now they're seeing that it's actually impacting people around them. And for a lot of people, it has to impact them directly. So I'll give you Senator Portman, for example. He was anti-gay everything until his son came out as being gay. Now, Senator Portman does not vote against the gay community. You know, sometimes it has to hit them right in the head. For the most part, most of us don't need that because we are empathetic and can see people around us struggling. But it's done with voting, it's done with organizing, and it's done with pushing for policies that are more equitable, and it's done from the bottom.
So there's no way to partner with people at the top or even midway that have
Yes.
more
Yeah.
power and more of a voice.
Yes, you can, but you have to push. And for example, like I said earlier, this is the first administration that has ever used the word poverty. talked about poor people, talked about the impact on poor people. And they have a committee, they have a poverty committee that is actually now working with the Poor People's Campaign. And it's not our directors and leaders that are on our end of the campaign. It's all people who are impacted, people who've lost their homes, people who've lost their health care, people who are fighting every day to stay alive and to stay in the system. They're speaking with their own voices and their experience, and they've got the most experience of all. So we actually have, you know, people that are inside working on there's a poverty initiative that they are working on right now. Then we have other things like the Break Free from Plastic Act, which talks about the environmental devastation. There's little chunks that are finally going through, and voting helps. You know, you might not always like every politician that gets elected, but eventually we will have the right people in place. We will have the people who know what they're doing in place and who aren't there to enrich themselves.
Yeah, more women, more women.
It's
I
coming.
Do we have any other questions? Would anyone else like to ask a question about the campaign?
There's just one, there's a comment in the chat from Jess that large corporations groom us to be consumers. Our faith shapes us to be responsible citizens. That is not prosperity gospel. Our faith, our religion, you can have faith without religion, but a lot of the religions are pushing basically corrupt moral narrative practices. And that's actually one of the 5 systemic evils. And I'll actually quote what Reverend Barber says. So the aim is to shift the distorted moral narrative often promoted by religious extremists in the nation from issues like prayers in school, abortion and gun rights, to one that is concerned with how our society treats the poor, those on the margins, and the least of these: women, LGBTQIA folks, workers, immigrants, the disabled, the sick, equality and representation under the law, and the desire for peace, love, and harmony within and among the nations. Pardon me. Prosperity gospel is still based on consuming. You know, you have more money because you were good. More money means you have more buying power. And yes, you are right. Corporations have groomed everybody. That's all we do is consume and pollute and destroy. But we have to break that as well. So hopefully that answers your question. If not, I can send you a whole bunch of stuff.
Hey.
Thank you.
Yeah, any other questions before we go here? We are just a little bit over our time, but if anyone else would like to ask one more question, we'll take it before we wrap up. All right. Well, Claire and Monica, do you have any final closing words for us tonight?
We have a song.
Yep. Well, and I would like to say, if anybody is looking to connect with the Ohio Poor People's Campaign, you can go to Poor People's Campaign and website and find my state, and you'll be able to find us there.
Yeah. And then we also have state pages on Facebook. So there's the Ohio page, which is the state page. There's Southwest, which is our region. There's Northeast, there's Northwest, and so on. So you can connect closer with people who are doing the work closer to your community as well.
Shall I close us out with a song?
Yes,
Sure.
please.
Okay.
Thank you.
We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Until the killing of black men, black mothers, sons is as important as the killing of white men, white mothers, sons. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Not needing to clutch for power, not needing the light just to shine on me. I need to be just one in the number as we stand against tyranny. To me, young people come first. They come first. They have the courage where we fail. If I can just shine a light on as they carry us through the gale. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. I'm a woman who speaks in a voice, and I must be heard. At times I can be quite difficult. I'll bow to no man's word. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Come on, sing. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. We who believe in freedom, we cannot rest. We cannot rest. We who believe in freedom, we cannot rest. We cannot rest. We who believe in freedom, we cannot rest. We cannot rest. We who believe in freedom, we cannot rest. We cannot rest. We who believe in freedom, we cannot rest. We will not rest. We who believe in freedom, we cannot rest. We will not rest. We who believe in freedom, we cannot rest. We will not rest. We who believe in freedom, we cannot rest. We will not rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until come on, sing now. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes.
That was awesome. Ella Baker was one of the civil rights activists. So that song was developed from her words. And then there's one more thing that we always end a meeting with. And Reverend Barber always yells out, "Forward together." And the rest of us yell, "Not one step back." And that's how we close the meeting. But thank you very much for hosting us. This was wonderful.
Yes, thank you for being here. It was wonderful. Thanks so much. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.